The recent decision by United States President Donald Trump to raise tariffs on steel and aluminum imports has triggered a swift and strong backlash from key trade allies, including the European Union, Canada, and Mexico. With these tariffs set to take effect on March 12th, these nations are already preparing countermeasures, which could potentially rekindle past trade disputes. Under this policy shift, the tariff rate on aluminum will increase from 10% to 25%, and previously granted exemptions for nations such as Canada, Mexico, and South Korea will be eliminated. This abrupt change nullifies previously negotiated quota agreements and hundreds of specific tariff exclusions, impacting millions of tons of metal imports. Unsurprisingly, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico have strongly criticized the decision, deeming it both unjustified and detrimental to global trade. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has expressed serious concerns about the implications of these tariffs. In response, the European Union is preparing to take decisive and proportionate countermeasures aimed at safeguarding European industries, ensuring fair trade practices, and sending a strong message that the EU will not tolerate what it considers unfair trade restrictions. One of the most immediate retaliatory steps under consideration is the reinstatement of tariffs originally imposed in 2018 during Trump's initial trade disputes. These tariffs had been temporarily suspended under a truce between Ursula von der Leyen and then-President Joe Biden. If reactivated, they will specifically target U.S. exports that hold significant economic and political value. Several American exports could face retaliatory tariffs, including products that are both culturally and economically important. Among them, bourbon whiskey, particularly from states like Kentucky, carries political significance, given its economic impact on U.S. lawmakers. Another potential target is Harley-Davidson motorcycles, an iconic American brand known for its association with domestic manufacturing. Motorboats, peanut butter, and Levi's jeans, all of which have strong consumer markets in Europe, could also be affected. Should these tariffs be reinstated, they could be enforced as early as April 2025, following the expiration of the current suspension period. Beyond the reintroduction of the 2018 tariffs, additional duties may be levied on U.S. exports to the European Union. Reports indicate that the European Commission has compiled a list of American goods valued at approximately 4.8 billion euros, 5.2 billion, that may be subjected to tariffs ranging from 25% to 50%. Among the industries likely to be impacted are steel and aluminum products, representing a direct countermeasure against Trump's tariff policy, as well as agricultural goods such as orange juice, corn, and dairy products, which hold substantial export value. The EU may also impose duties on technology and industrial equipment, including machinery, semiconductors, and other tech-related exports. By targeting key U.S. industries, the European Union seeks to exert pressure on Washington to reconsider its tariff policies while mitigating adverse effects on European businesses and consumers. Additionally, the EU is exploring special safeguard measures to prevent market disruptions caused by redirected steel and aluminum imports. With Trump's tariffs limiting U.S. metal imports, surplus materials that would have been sold in the U.S. could instead flood European markets, leading to oversupply and price destabilization. To counteract this risk, the EU may implement import quotas on steel and aluminum from other nations to maintain domestic market stability. Further, trade restrictions on subsidized imports from China could be tightened, given long-standing accusations that China has overproduced steel, contributing to trade imbalances. To support its manufacturing sector, the EU might also introduce subsidies or incentives aimed at preserving the competitiveness of European producers. Canada has also voiced strong opposition to Trump's tariff policy and is preparing countermeasures to protect its economy. With Canada supplying nearly 80% of U.S. aluminum imports in 2024, its industries are poised to suffer significant financial setbacks due to these new tariffs. In retaliation, the Canadian government is considering imposing counter tariffs on key U.S. industries, particularly those heavily reliant on Canadian resources. One possible course of action involves reviving its initial tariff plan in response to the 25% duties on Canadian exports. This plan includes imposing equivalent tariffs on $155 billion worth of U.S. goods, with the first phase, amounting to $30 billion, set to take effect on February 4, 2025, aligning with the implementation of the U.S. tariffs. The range of American exports targeted under Canada's retaliatory measures is extensive, encompassing consumer goods and essential commodities. Among the products subject to tariffs are orange juice, peanut butter, wine, spirits, beer, coffee, household appliances, apparel, footwear, motorcycles, cosmetics, and pulp and paper products. A comprehensive list detailing these tariffed goods will be released soon. In addition to these countermeasures, Canada has already taken steps to reduce its economic reliance on the United States by diversifying its oil and commodity exports. Increasing trade with the European Union and Southeast Asian markets serves as a strategic move to mitigate potential economic fallout from the U.S. tariff policies. A significant development in Canada's trade realignment is its shift in oil exports away from the U.S. toward China. Recent data indicates that Canada has begun adjusting its oil export strategy to adapt to shifting trade dynamics with the U.S. and growing demand in Asian markets, particularly China. The Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, which commenced operations in May 2024, plays a pivotal role in this transition. The project has significantly increased the capacity for transporting oil from Alberta to Canada's Pacific coast, facilitating greater access to high-demand Asian markets. One of the key beneficiaries of this shift is Rongsheng Petrochemical, which has secured deals to supply oil to Asia, offering Canadian producers new opportunities to expand their market reach. The Trans Mountain Pipeline is currently operating at approximately 80% capacity, with the potential to further boost Canada's position in global energy exports. The company expects that these tariffs will drive an increase in shipments to Asia, particularly to China, as exporters seek alternative markets. The expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which became operational in May 2024, has significantly boosted the volume of crude oil transported from Alberta to Canada's Pacific coast. The pipeline's capacity has now tripled, reaching 890,000 barrels per day. This expansion provides Canadian producers with broader access to Asian markets, reducing their dependence on the United States. Recently, major refiners in China, Japan, South Korea, and Brunei have secured shipments from the expanded pipeline. For instance, in September 2024, the Chinese private refining company Rongsheng Petrochemical arranged multiple shipments of Canadian crude. Canada's strategic pivot toward Asian markets is driven by several key factors. One primary motivation is market diversification, as reducing reliance on the U.S. helps safeguard against risks associated with trade disputes and tariff impositions. Another critical factor is demand alignment, particularly in China, where the need for heavy crude oil is increasing, making it an ideal destination for Canadian exports. Additionally, entering high-demand Asian markets presents economic advantages, offering Canadian producers better pricing opportunities and access to a broader customer base. However, Canada's push to expand oil exports comes amid ongoing environmental commitments. While the country has implemented nationwide carbon pricing and taken steps to reduce emissions, it continues to invest heavily in oil extraction projects. The Trans Mountain Pipeline has come to symbolize this contradiction as it facilitates increased oil exports while Canada simultaneously pursues climate goals. Critics argue that such investments undermine efforts to meet emissions reduction targets and highlight the complex challenge of balancing economic growth with environmental responsibilities. Canada plays a pivotal role in the global oil market, producing approximately 5.76 million barrels per day, which accounts for 6% of the world's total oil output. This places Canada among the top oil-producing nations. The leading oil producers and their estimated daily production figures are as follows. 1. United States, 12.91 million barrels per day, 22% of global production. 2. Saudi Arabia, 11.13 million barrels per day, 11%. 3. Russia, 10.75 million barrels per day, 11%. 4. Canada, 5.76 million barrels per day, 6%. 5. China, 5.26 million barrels per day, 5%. Together, these 5 nations produce more than half of the world's oil supply. Canada's oil production has grown significantly over the past few decades. In 2019, the country averaged 4.7 million barrels per day, with 64% of production coming from unconventional oil sands. By 2023, production had increased to approximately 5.76 million barrels per day, solidifying Canada's position as the 4th largest oil producer globally. In terms of oil reserves, Canada possesses the world's 3rd largest proven reserves, estimated at around 180 billion barrels, most of which are located in Alberta's oil sands. This vast resource base underscores Canada's significant role in the global energy sector. A substantial portion of Canada's oil production is exported. In 2023, crude oil exports reached a record high of 4 million barrels per day, representing 81% of the country's total output. The overwhelming majority, 98% of these exports, were shipped to the United States, highlighting the deep interdependence between the two countries in the North American energy market. Canada's export economy is diverse, spanning a wide range of industries and products. The country is a leading exporter of energy, minerals, automotive products, and industrial equipment. Among the most significant categories of Canadian exports are energy products. This includes crude oil, petroleum gas, and refined petroleum products, which generated substantial revenue in 2023. The U.S. remains the primary market for these exports, reinforcing the integrated nature of the North American energy economy. Automobiles. Canada's automotive industry is a major contributor to its export economy, with vehicle exports generating approximately $63.6 billion in revenue in 2023. The industry, primarily concentrated in Ontario and Quebec, focuses on passenger cars, SUVs, and light trucks, with the bulk of production destined for the U.S. market. Machinery and industrial equipment. Exports of machinery, including nuclear reactors and boilers, contributed roughly $42.46 billion in revenue. This sector encompasses a wide array of industrial and technological equipment essential for various global industries. Precious metals and minerals. Canada's rich mineral resources make it a leading exporter of gold, diamonds, and platinum. The export value of these commodities was approximately $26.74 billion in 2023. Electronic equipment. Spanning consumer electronics to industrial devices, this category contributed around $16.01 billion in export revenue. The sector includes telecommunications equipment and electronic components used in diverse applications. Key export destinations for these goods include the United States and Mexico, supported by trade agreements such as the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA. Canada and China have developed a strong trade relationship, though it has resulted in a trade deficit of 36% for Canada. This trade imbalance is largely due to increased imports of Chinese goods, despite steady Canadian exports. In 2023, Canada exported approximately $22.6 billion worth of goods to China, while imports from China totaled around $62.1 billion, leading to a $36.7 billion deficit. Canada's exports to China cover a variety of key commodities, contributing significantly to bilateral trade. One of the major export categories is oilseeds and oleaginous fruits, which accounted for $3.84 billion, with canola leading the sector. This category saw an impressive annual growth rate of 75.21%, largely due to increased demand following the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions in China and the normalization of market access for Canadian producers. In the first quarter of 2023 alone, canola exports reached $1.27 billion, marking a 331.65% increase compared to the previous year. Another critical export sector is ores, slag, and ash, valued at $3.58 billion. This category primarily consists of iron and copper, both essential for China's industrial sector. Iron ore exports to China totaled $2.5 billion, reflecting a 15.58% increase year over year, while copper exports reached $1.6 billion, growing by 13.57%. Mineral fuels and oils also play a major role, with coal leading the sector. In 2023, Canadian coal exports to China were valued at $3.04 billion, though this figure represented a 12.93% decline from the previous year, in part due to China resuming coal trade with Australia, which intensified competition. The pulp and wood products sector contributed $2.3 billion in exports, with chemical wood pulp alone generating $2.21 billion in 2023. This segment saw modest growth of 1.98% year over year, reflecting continued demand from China's paper and packaging industries. Additionally, cereal exports to China, including wheat and barley, reached $1.49 billion. The rise in demand for these products has been driven by shifting dietary patterns and the need to supplement China's domestic production. Between 2019 and 2023, Canada's cereal exports to China grew at an annual rate of 19%. On the import side, Canada's trade with China has continued to expand, reaching a record high of nearly 100 billion Canadian dollars in 2022, a 16% increase from the previous year. Key import categories include consumer goods, valued at 31 billion Canadian dollars. This category encompasses a vast range of products, including household items, clothing, and personal care goods. Electronics and electrical equipment, accounting for 28 billion Canadian dollars. This sector underscores China's role as a dominant supplier of electronic products to the Canadian market, highlighting strong demand for consumer electronics and industrial components. These figures illustrate the increasing integration of Canada-China trade, while also emphasizing Canada's growing trade deficit with China. For those unfamiliar with the rising tensions between Canada and the United States, these economic shifts are closely tied to recent political developments. In December 2024, tensions escalated following remarks made by U.S. President Donald Trump, which further strained relations between the two nations. During a meeting at Mar-a-Lago, Trump made controversial statements regarding Canada's trade policies and political status. In early 2025, U.S.-Canada disputes intensified after President Trump suggested that Canada consider becoming the 51st state of the United States. Alongside this proposal, his administration imposed steep tariffs on Canadian goods. At a press conference on January 7, 2025, when asked whether Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had proposed any solutions to avoid these tariffs, Trump responded, "What I'd like to see is Canada becoming our 51st state." Trump later reinforced this stance on his social media platform, Truth Social, stating, "We spend hundreds of billions of dollars subsidizing Canada. Why? There's no reason for it. We have unlimited energy, our own car manufacturing, and more lumber than we could ever use. Without these massive subsidies, Canada wouldn't survive as a nation." Harsh but true. So Canada should become our beloved 51st state, with lower taxes, better military protection for its people, and no tariffs. These comments only deepened tensions, particularly when Trump remarked that Canada doesn't really have a military. They have a very small one. He further claimed that the U.S. spends hundreds of billions of dollars every year protecting Canada, and criticized Canadian policies for allegedly restricting U.S. banks from operating freely, questioning, what's that all about? At the same time, his administration moved forward with imposing a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, with a slightly lower 10% tariff on Canadian energy exports. The U.S. government justified these measures by citing national security concerns, linking them to issues such as illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Trump's assertion that the United States provides extensive financial support to Canada has been widely debated. While trade deficits and economic ties remain crucial to both nations, economic analysts argue that Canada's economy is driven largely by market forces and consumer demand, rather than direct U.S. subsidies. However, these remarks, combined with the newly imposed tariffs, have created uncertainty in trade relations, prompting Canada to accelerate its diversification efforts toward Asia. In 2024, the United States recorded a trade deficit with Canada, largely due to substantial imports of Canadian oil. However, a trade deficit does not imply a subsidy. It merely reflects that the U.S. purchases more from Canada than it exports in return, driven by market dynamics and consumer demand rather than direct financial support. The economic ties between the two nations are deeply interwoven and provide mutual benefits. In 2023, 77% of Canada's total exports were sent to the United States, while nearly half of Canada's imports originated from the U.S., solidifying their status as each other's largest trading partners. This strong economic relationship supports millions of jobs and plays a crucial role in both nations' GDP. Additionally, the U.S. derives significant advantages from this trade arrangement. Canada serves as the largest energy supplier to the United States, providing crude oil, natural gas, and electricity, resources that are essential for American industries and consumers. Moreover, a key factor influencing trade imbalances is the stark difference in population size. As of 2024, the U.S. population was approximately 339 million, more than 8 times that of Canada's estimated 40 million residents. This vast disparity results in a considerably larger consumer base in the U.S., driving higher demand for goods and services, including imports from Canada. As a result, the trade deficit between the two nations is more reflective of market size variations than any form of government-subsidized economic imbalance. Former President Donald Trump's claim that American banks are restricted from operating in Canada misrepresents the actual financial landscape. Canada enforces strict financial regulations to ensure stability, but these apply equally to both domestic and foreign financial institutions. In reality, U.S. banks have several legal avenues to conduct business in Canada. One such method is through Schedule II banks, which are subsidiaries of foreign banks permitted to accept deposits, and offer full banking services. Major U.S.-based banks operating in this category include Citibank Canada, J.P. Morgan Bank Canada, and AMEX Bank of Canada. Another option is Schedule III banks, which consist of foreign bank branches licensed to conduct specialized banking activities, primarily in corporate and investment banking. Notable examples include Bank of America, National Association, Wells Fargo Bank National Association, and Citibank N.A. These U.S. financial institutions play a critical role in wealth management, investment banking, and corporate financing within Canada. Recent data reveals that 16 U.S.-based bank subsidiaries and branches operate in Canada, collectively holding assets valued at approximately 13 billion Canadian dollars. For instance, J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the largest American financial institutions, has maintained a presence in Canada for over a century and employs around 600 people across key financial hubs such as Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and Montreal. While Canadian regulations impose certain operational requirements, they do not prohibit U.S. banks from conducting business in the country. Instead, these policies are designed to maintain financial stability and protect consumers, ensuring that both domestic and foreign banks adhere to the same high standards. Therefore, Trump's assertion inaccurately represents the actual conditions governing U.S. bank operations in Canada. Additionally, President Trump has claimed that large quantities of fentanyl are being smuggled into the United States from Canada, using this assertion as partial justification for imposing tariffs on Canadian imports. While there is documented evidence of some fentanyl production and trafficking within Canada, particularly in British Columbia, most of the fentanyl entering the U.S. originates from Mexico. Mexican cartels manufacture the drug using precursor chemicals sourced from China, then smuggle it into the U.S. through well-established distribution networks. Canadian law enforcement has acknowledged instances of domestic fentanyl production, and it is possible that some of these drugs are trafficked internationally, including into the United States. However, comprehensive data on the total volume of fentanyl entering the U.S. from Canada remains limited. Seizure statistics indicate that the vast majority of fentanyl interdictions occur along the U.S.-Mexico border, suggesting that the northern border with Canada plays a far less significant role in fentanyl trafficking than implied by Trump's claims. That concludes this discussion. Thank you for watching. We truly appreciate your support. If you found this content informative or engaging, we encourage you to like this video and subscribe to our channel to stay connected with our community. Your support is invaluable to us. Feel free to explore another video from our channel, now appearing on your screen.